In the midst of chaos, Ukrainian soldiers infiltrate enemy territory, disguised in Russian uniforms. Opposing troops are caught by surprise. The forests hide fighters carrying out a silent offensive, while armed drones provide lethal support. In every trench, a story of resistance. In every attack, a single choice can change everything. Stay with us on these missions and see the truth up close on the front lines. What you are about to see contains sensitive footage from the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It is presented strictly for documentary purposes. In these images, we see a powerful operation against Snake Island, led by Ukraine. Intense attacks by combat helicopters bombarded the island, forcing Russian troops to seek shelter, which also allowed transport helicopters to land safely. With the area secured, Ukrainian Special Forces operators disembarked directly onto the island from MWAS-8 helicopters. The Ukrainian soldiers had to maintain constant fire to suppress enemy defenses and advance towards the bunkers to neutralize them. In a short time, the Ukrainian troops reached the structures and launched their assault. Using suppressive fire, they stormed the buildings, neutralizing all remaining Russian soldiers on site. During the clash, some Russian soldiers managed to escape to the Black Sea using small boats. Snake Island, located in the Black Sea about 35 kilometers from the Ukrainian coast, is a highly strategic geographical position. Whoever controls the island can monitor and potentially restrict naval traffic in the northwest Black Sea, including crucial routes for Ukraine's maritime trade. The loss of Snake Island represented a significant strategic setback for Russian forces. With the island under Ukrainian control, operators raised the national flag at the highest point, symbolizing victory. To this day, Ukraine maintains its strategic presence in the region. Next, the footage captures an unusual moment, a drone apparently carrying a rifle for a Ukrainian soldier. However, in reality, the weapon is attached to the drone itself. This action is part of an experimental initiative aimed at expanding the capabilities of drones, traditionally used for reconnaissance or aerial strikes, by equipping them with firearms, allowing them to engage targets on the ground directly. Shooting down small drones using advanced air defense systems is technically feasible, but rarely represents a cost-effective solution. This is because these systems were originally designed to counter larger and more strategically valuable threats. Deploying such equipment against simple, low-cost drones often results in a waste of resources. Given this scenario, armed forces around the world have been investing in the development and application of specific technologies to combat drones, seeking more affordable and effective alternatives, such as directed energy weapons, which can neutralize threats without depleting more sophisticated arsenals. Currently, the most effective systems against drones are self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, such as the German-made Gepard. Equipment like this stands out for its combination of high mobility and firing rate, allowing for a quick and efficient response to multiple aerial targets. The Gepard, specifically, is armed with two 35mm Oerlikon cannons and equipped with advanced radar systems, capable of detecting, tracking, and eliminating drones. Although not a definitive solution, these guns provide a practical and significantly more efficient response in the current context of the battlefield. In these recordings, we observe Ukrainian Special Forces units conducting clearance operations against Russian positions in a forested area. Highlighted are the so-called DRG, reconnaissance and sabotage groups, responsible for executing missions aimed at destabilizing Russian units behind enemy lines. These soldiers have played a crucial role in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, being among the first to set foot on Russian territory. The operating style of these groups has caused panic among Russian troops. To illustrate the audacity of these units, there are reports that some Ukrainian soldiers have been using armbands and other Russian identification symbols to disguise their presence. A pro-Russian outlet even issued a warning to the military. Ukrainian Special Forces are using red tactical armbands to organize ambushes and rear area operations. We urge the Russian armed forces to be extremely vigilant to avoid confusing disguised enemies with allies. The main goal of these tactics is to increase the survival chances of Ukrainian groups and allow them to move unnoticed through populated areas without drawing attention from civilians or Russian forces. By wearing Russian military uniforms and gaining local trust, they enhance their chances of initiating combat with an advantage. Soldiers support HQ with a sticker. It helps the channel grow. Or if you want to get even closer, join the squad as an official member. The footage reveals that it is not only the Ukrainian special forces imposing challenges on Russian troops, but also the Russian helicopters themselves. According to reports, a Russian helicopter reportedly accidentally targeted its own vehicles. Moscow, however, disputed this version, claiming that the attack was directed against Ukrainian positions. Ukraine, in turn, released footage showing destroyed Russian vehicles, reinforcing its version of events. The footage recorded by cameras mounted on the helmets of Ukrainian Special Forces soldiers shows operations and ambushes carried out on Russian territory, specifically in the Kursk region. In this operation, paratroopers from Ukraine's 82nd Air Assault Brigade ambushed Russian military vehicles in a carefully planned offensive. The mission was executed quickly, aiming to surprise the enemy using only light weapons, without the support of machine guns or rocket launchers. Although the Kursk region is currently under Russian control and serves as a strategic base for attacks against Ukraine, Ukrainian forces continue to carry out ambush missions against Russian troops in the area, demonstrating their ability to operate behind enemy lines. In the following footage, we see how the use of drones has increased exponentially, reaching unprecedented levels. The effectiveness of this technology on the battlefield has become a decisive factor for the Ukrainians. Amid the tension, several Russian soldiers move cautiously, seeking an escape route. However, Ukrainian drone operators remain vigilant, monitoring every move of the enemy. The Russian soldiers face growing despair with the constant buzzing of the drones, and despite attempts to camouflage themselves in forested areas to evade surveillance, nothing escapes the sharp eyes of these FPV drones. The Ukrainian offensive begins. And Russian soldiers try to rescue their comrades. However, sometimes the human survival instinct is inevitable. Even with the sacrifice of abandoning a soldier, not all managed to escape the Ukrainian offensive unharmed. Now, 2 Russian soldiers need to be carried, complicating the attempt of the others to leave the area. In May of this year, a highly complex operation was conducted by the SSO, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, as they entered territory controlled by Russian forces. The mission's objective was to locate a heavily fortified Russian shelter. The troops approached with precision and absolute silence. Every movement was carefully calculated to avoid detection. The Ukrainian soldiers managed to breach the Russian defenses and position themselves near the enemy shelter, remaining in a constant state of alert for any potential confrontation. Once at the appropriate distance, the Ukrainian commandos issued direct orders to the Russian soldiers inside, demanding they drop their weapons and surrender. The location was surrounded. Gradually, the Russians left the shelter, and the operation was carried out perfectly, without the need for any shots fired. The Russian soldiers were identified as members of the 34th Brigade, a military formation with Soviet heritage. After the surrender, the Ukrainian forces conducted thorough searches and gathered valuable intelligence on other Russian positions in the region, considered essential for planning future military actions. More than a tactical success, this mission symbolized the psychological and strategic superiority of the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces. The ability to infiltrate hostile territory, capture a vital objective, and collect intelligence demonstrates the excellence of their training, professionalism, and operational effectiveness of this elite group. The footage shows Ukrainian assault troops advancing across the terrain in search of the entrance to yet another trench under Russian control. Moscow's soldiers stand firm, fully aware that the imminent confrontation will be decisive, and only one side will emerge victorious. Under constant surveillance from drones patrolling the skies, Kiev's forces secure another battlefield victory. However, this achievement is only part of a campaign that has already lasted several days, facing stubborn resistance from Russian forces who refuse to retreat and abandon their positions. The situation intensifies with increasingly fierce combat. The determination of the Ukrainian troops is unwavering. Their goal is to completely dismantle the invading forces. Deprived of any hope of holding the defensive lines, Russian troops begin to focus solely on escape and survival. However, this attempt is continuously thwarted by the Ukrainian FPV drone units, which maintain constant surveillance and pressure, turning every retreat attempt into an imminent risk. When Russian soldiers believe they have reached a safe shelter, they are surprised by another aerial offensive precisely conducted by the Ukrainian forces. desperation, they futilely try to shoot down the drones with rifle fire, but they know that as long as these machines fly over the area, the threat will be permanent. Ukraine's technological advancement in this sector has transformed the war's landscape. The effectiveness of unmanned aerial vehicles is undeniable. Beyond their increasing numbers, the Ukrainian arsenal has incorporated fundamental technological innovations, ensuring a clear advantage over the enemy's systems. Ukrainian assault troops advance across the devastated terrain until reaching the entrance of one of the last enemy trenches. Under the attentive and strategic watch of the drones, Kiev's forces claim another victory. Yet, the enemy resistance persists. Days of intense operations have passed, but Russian combatants refuse to abandon their positions and cede the hard-fought territory. The clashes intensify. Faced with the imminent loss of their positions, Russian troops shift their focus. Now, the priority is escape. They attempt to flee, seeking shelter beyond the reach of Kiev's forces. However, the highly trained Ukrainian drone operators do not lose track of the enemy, monitoring every movement. Tension rises with every meter traveled. Kiev's troops know the adversary is weakened, but still poses a real threat. Suddenly, the silence of the battlefield is broken by a continuous burst of gunfire. When the Russians believe they have found a safe location, they are caught off guard by an airstrike. Under intense fire, the Russians fight to escape, but Ukrainian tactical superiority is evident. The battle ends. No organized Russian forces remain to resist. The territory is retaken by the Ukrainians, while drones ensure that the last enemy pockets are neutralized. You watched through to the end. Only real ones do that. Show some love with a like.